Welcome back to the road to City Hall. President Trump sparked a national debate this weekend when he angrily criticized professional football players who kneel in protest during the national anthem. The president's words sparked a massive backlash, with more players than ever, over 100, protesting yesterday, and even NFL owners spoke out against the president. As the controversy exploded, Trump defended his comments, saying that it, quote, has nothing to do with race, with his critics, of course, loudly disagreeing. We've got a special panel here to talk more about this. Jelani is a staff writer for The New Yorker. Michael Powell is a sports columnist for The New York Times. And Jamal Murphy covers sports for CBS and is a co-host of the Bill Rhoden on Sports podcast. Thank you all for being here. And let's start with the obvious. When the president says it's not about race, nobody should take that seriously, right?
Well, unfortunately, he doesn't have credibility on this. You know, he could say that it's not about race, but race has been a subtext or an overt part of the text since he began his presidential campaign by denouncing Mexicans as rapists, or we say he began his political life by questioning the citizenship of the sitting president that preceded him. So, no, it's not really credible when he says that this has nothing to do with race. And then there's another dynamic here that, you know, Trump is giving this speech in Alabama. He knows who he's talking to. There's been public polling to show that people who were Trump supporters concurred with the idea that black people have been, quote, given too much in society. So this was kind of red meat. It was tailor-made for that audience. And so I'm highly, highly skeptical of the idea that there was no racial intent in it.
Well, also, there was no, Kaepernick has been effectively blackballed from the league by the largely white or vastly white owners already. There was no longer a controversy. So, I mean, right, you kind of keep going back, so why now? Why this 78% black league? And I think, you know, you come ineluctably, inevitably, every single time to it's about race. I mean, there's sort of no other interior logic to this.
I mean, this entire situation started because of race in the first place. Kaepernick was kneeling, you know, based on police brutality against black people in the country. So it was a racial issue to start with. Everybody knows that. You know, people who support Trump will try to take it other places, say it's about the flag. It's you know, you're disrespecting the flag. You're disrespecting. You're not being patriotic. But it's not about that. You know, from the start, it was Kaepernick and race. It was a racial issue to start.
Well, that's a sweet spot for a lot of people, right? Is to be able to sort of have some deniability that, oh, it's not about race. I just don't like when people don't salute the flag. I mean, we've got a political candidate in here in New York who's been saying something along those lines. But let me ask you about the other dynamic that I found really interesting, which is this question of how are athletes who are, any way you look at it, they are well paid. They're not millionaires, and there's some interesting numbers around that too. I'm sure you know all about. But you know how they're supposed to react, right? You wrote an article as like ungratefulness as the new uppity was part of the title. How are they supposed to act, and have they reconceived? Have they changed their mind about who and how they're supposed to carry themselves in public?
Well, remember, prior to Trump saying something, it was just a select few athletes that were kneeling. You know, a couple per, you know, not even per team. You know, I think there were 9. I think the number I heard was 9 throughout the league the week prior to this week. So it was sporadic. You could say most players were not protesting this situation, and there were a lot of people. You know, you always hear about the other side who are going to boycott the NFL now because, you know, they're patriots and we can't take this. You're not respecting the flag. But there are a bunch of people on the other side. I speak to black people every day who are telling me they're boycotting because of Kaepernick not getting a job. So there are people on the other side that were asking for players to step up, you know, more forcefully. So what Trump actually did was create that. He galvanized players. Kenny Stills, a wide receiver from Miami, after the game, he had said the week prior, you know, I'm going to give up kneeling. I'm going to take it to another area. So he was asked why he did it this week. He said, well, Trump challenged us.
That's right.
Trump, he demeaned us. He tried to intimidate us. So, you know, I felt like I had to do it again. And you know, it's not a great situation to have the president calling people names and that being the precursor to this, but whatever it takes, I guess.
There's also a kind of weird politics of gratitude here. Wherein people, you know, referred, you know, Congressman Joe Walsh referred to Stevie Wonder as, quote, another ungrateful black millionaire, as if, you know, we've ever talked about hedge fund managers as ungrateful, or any other group of wealthy people as, needing to adopt a constant poise of gratitude and servility. And so this is not, without a kind of racial context to it. Then beyond this, Trump is himself, purportedly at least, a millionaire. And he has centered his entire campaign upon grievances, very often airing his personal grievances. So how is it that he is allowed to have grievances? He is allowed to see himself as a victim.
He won't even pay his taxes.
Excuse me?
He won't even pay his
He won't
taxes.
release his taxes.
Right.
Like, we probably have a better idea of how much in taxes these NFL players are paying than we do of the current president of the United States.
Oh, we definitely do.
I mean, I take what has happened to Kaepernick, though, as a sign of how vulnerable these guys are. I mean, in the end, you can push things, you can try things, you can do great things, you can actually get a lot of support. But in the end, despite all of their statements, the NFL owners, none of them said the phrase that would really sort of make a difference, which is that, you know what, we're going to pick up Kaepernick for the season.
This is a profoundly, the NFL is probably the most sort of culturally, socially conservative league of any of the major sports leagues, with the possible exception of hockey, if we put them in there. I mean, if you compare it, say, to the NBA athletes over the last 10 years have been enormously outspoken on any number of issues, right? From endorsing candidates to doing voter registration and this sort of thing.
I can't breathe t-shirts.
Yes, I can't breathe. I mean, they've really been, and the leaders, LeBron James, Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony have been really kind of outspoken. So to some extent, this is for football players who, by the way, have far worse contracts, usually not fully insured, right? They're only going to get a piece of their contract. And it's been a much more, I almost hate to say this, but I mean, it's sort of a plantation type mentality in football, this sense that the owner can tell you what to do. So in that sense, when the president starts to say, fire them, I mean, he's kind of harking back not all that far into the distant past of the NFL.
And maybe the numbers that I saw suggested that the median salary is something like $860,000. It's a lot of money. It's real nice.
Right. But if not you're remotely like baseball or even basketball.
Not remotely even like what sort of the top players, the quarterbacks get. But also, I mean, if you're 28, you're 27, you're making that kind of money. Your lifespan in the NFL is what, 48 months, something like that, if you're lucky.
And it's not
right. And it's not guaranteed. That's what you're basically saying. These are not guaranteed contracts, and that is definitely a reason why NFL players are less likely to put themselves on the line. They're not as stable. They know they need this money. They need this job, and that's why I was asking, and I was saying prior to this week that more players had to come out, because the power is in the numbers. One player here, even like Kaepernick, a solid player, better than solid, a good player, but not a superstar. So it's either the superstar needs to come out, or they need to come out in numbers to where the owners have to respond to them. Because we went through, I think in 1983 with the scab players. We as the fans know who the best players are in this league, and we want to see them. Okay, so if it becomes a situation where the quality of play becomes jeopardized as a whole, the owners don't want any piece of that. So the players need to act together on this.
And just for history's sake, I mean, we know of people who history recognizes as great superstars, right? Whether you're talking about Muhammad Ali, whether you're talking about Paul Robeson, who actually spent a couple of years in the NFL. They all paid a terrible price, though. I mean, Ali, any way you look at it, spent some of his best years not boxing. Robeson, fortunately also had could sing like an angel, and so he had a different career and went on and went about his business. The guys from the 1968 Olympics, who ended up teaching, doing high school track, were effectively blackballed from their sport as well. People really are, even as a movement comes together.
Add Kurt Flood to that too.
So there's a price to be paid here, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a price to be paid, and especially when one or two players on their own stick their neck out and they don't get the support of the league as a whole. But at the same time, all those guys you mentioned are legends. most of them have statues. Okay,
Yes.
those are the guys we remember. And that's what I think players need to think about also. How are you going to be remembered? Because this is a time, Kaepernick, for instance, if he never plays another down, we'll never forget his name.
Right.
Right.
I mean, I think that when I was watching around the league on Sunday, and it was looking like the culminating scene of a biopic, that there's a story of this person who takes a stand, unpopular, literally alone, and then because of the intervening forces, winds up being attacked by the most powerful person in the country, and that only amplifies his message. I mean, I think there is something important in that story.
And of course, that's where we swing from sports right back into politics and the coverage of that movement, which this show and many others will be following. Thank you all so much, gentlemen, for coming by. We're going to continue this conversation another time. Right now, though, we're going to take a quick break. Straight ahead, the controversy over the national anthem has also made its way into the race for mayor. We're going to talk about that and more with 4 top political strategists in our Monday Consultants Corner. Stay with us.
I wake up every morning at 3:08 a.m. exactly, and at 5:08 a.m., first Rail and Road report of the day. It's an honor to give the traffic report every morning. People are waking up with us, and they rely on us to tell them what their morning is going to be like. I love when viewers tweet me about the traffic. They help us put together the story and my traffic reports. There's so many things that can happen in a New Yorker's life, and it's a privilege to be able to tell them what to expect each morning.
So much of political coverage is the horse race coverage. It's who's winning and who's losing, who's up and who's down. But there's so much else that's important, whether it's how candidates get on the ballot or how they finance campaigns. My job at NY1 is to be a translator, to take these complicated subjects and put them into language that our viewers can understand. Politics shouldn't just be about the horse race. It's about why this matters to people and how it actually affects their lives. I'm Bobby Kuza, political reporter, NY1.
When I'm running, I think about how my story is going to evolve. We all have problems that need to be heard. That is my role here at NY1, is listening to someone who may never have been listened to before. There are many sides and faces to the homeless crisis in New York. It's a difficult story to tell, but it's something we do at NY1 all the time. I'm not someone who gives up very easily. I just don't take no for an answer. I'm Courtney Gross, political reporter, NY1.
Just like the rest of New York, Crown Heights is special because it means different things to different people. This is where I started. This is the house my dad bought. This is the house I want to raise my son in. And what we don't